Evening all, gave up on Gleba, going to Vulcanus, simple as that. What I thought I'd do is actually start to unlock some of the artillery. Never used artillery, maybe it's time. Need to try and find a way to handle the biters. They're getting a bit of a problem again. I could just go and exterminate them with nuclear weapons, but nuclear weapons never feels very sporting, does it? It doesn't give good sport. So I thought artillery might be fun, because at least then you get like the rampager to your walls. That's kind of fun. All of the planets I have are now being sort of turned into end game planets. What do I mean by that? Well, all of the planets that I've done so far, they work, they produce the science, and they, tick in the box. They do what they're supposed to do, but they don't look very pretty. So just before we came back from Gleba to Nauvis, picked up a load of foundations. We're going to use foundations to make Vulcanus great again. I think that's the kind of desire I have with Vulcanus, is to make it a bit more pretty. So that's going to be the focus. A lot of the effort is going to be really just making so that we can probably put a city block down. I quite like city block. I think it works quite well. I think what I'm going to do here, and you'll see me kind of flailing around in this video, is trying to work out how best to do that. There's kind of a couple of things you need. When you do city block, you've got to try and encompass an area that works. I think the city block from Nauvis is too big, so we're probably not going to use that, but you'll see me trying sizing it up. I think we're going to go for one that's half the size, and I kind of like manufacturing cells. Has always been something that I'm quite excited about. So I live a simple life. I get excited about manufacturing cells. Because you can then just have trains with maybe one engine and one carriage zipping around. That's the design. When we go and look at things like Aquilo and Gleba and Fulgora, they'll all be different. So while they'll have the sort of spirit of the city block, they won't necessarily have, well, the same city block. So the first thing we're going to do with this particular area is figure out where to build artillery shells, because they are going to be quite important. So really just trying to kind of engineer the end game now. So things like the substations, currently I have common substations, and now we have a glut of legendary substations. So maybe now is the time to re-engineer it into that. So that's going to be what we're going to do. We're going to clear a space. We're going to get rid of that. That's in the way. I want a terminus station. Don't know what killed that, by the way. I want a terminus station so things can be delivered here as well. We'll just blueprint it to begin with, but that's the order of the day. The purpose for Vulcanus for me is probably going to be turning it into much more of an iron and copper production as well. Currently, if you could stack iron and copper a bit better, I think I would even smelt it here and have it delivered to the planets. But for now, you don't really need to do that. Gleba is like probably the one. Well, Aquilo, you do need to do that. But for Gleba, probably would like to do this. I don't like growing my own copper and iron there. I don't think it's terribly efficient. I think a giant manufactorum ship appearing in orbit and literally dropping via pod a huge kind of swathe of iron and copper really gets my juices flowing. As you can see, city block's too big. I don't think it's going to work here. I don't want to have to make tons of the foundations. I'd rather make sort of choice. And again, see, that's the general city block there. I don't think it's going to work. I think it's a bit too big. So probably what we'll do is we'll go for a quarter of that. And it might look a bit sort of busy, I guess. But because we are still limited on space, we don't want to kind of just massively expand in this area, because again, you don't need to. The infinite resource of lava is the key thing here, and there's always lava. So really, that's going to make this a very different thing. The city block on Nauvis is very different. You get the point. A lot of what I'm trying to do as well is just try and figure out what planet should do what. So Vulcanus to me really is going to become, like Mars in Warhammer 40k is going to be the manufactorum planet. It's going to be a hellish place that if a novice finds themselves being assigned now, it's basically a death sentence. Because I just think this is a great place to make, well, everything really, that's kind of initial base game. I actually think it's probably the best planet in the entire system. Nauvis is fine, but you do have to chase the ore patches, whereas here you never have to move your base, ever. The only exception would be tungsten, things like that, but again, you could just do long distance railway for that. And you're not exactly using huge quantities of that as well, as far as I can tell. I mean, I have been playing this for hundreds of hours now, and I've not burnt through any tungsten ore patch, except the very small one that I ninja mined at the very start. So I think that's probably going to be what we do. I want to try and, so here we go, we're trying to sort of convert everything to legendary as well, because having the legendary stuff makes everything a bit better. But when it comes to things like the drone or the roboports and so on, it's not as clear cut. So might need to kind of clarify this design. Post in the comments, how have you done this? Because at the moment we've only got common roboports but legendary substations. So cover a much wider area, but it also means you have to think a bit more carefully about where to put the roboports if you want it to look nice. And I think that's just something I'm going to have to work out. But to begin with, we need a space where we can actually build the production plant effectively for artillery shells, which are going to be obviously quite highly used. That makes me think, as I sort of sit here and yammer on, that actually we need to make a spaceship. We need a bang bus, quite literally, to be something that goes to Nauvis. I don't think, well, I guess we could take them to Gleba as well, but for now we won't, because I don't really want to annoy the pentapods. Post in the comments what you think about my design here. It doesn't give complete coverage logistics wise, but that's okay. I don't think we need complete coverage, because here again the design impetus here is going to be trains, belts before bots. I think, you know, it's I don't want to put bots like everywhere. I find bots a bit of a cop out. I think they're there when you need them. I think I'd much rather have belts and trains doing everything. A, because it looks nicer. B, I think it just is less punishing on the eyes, because you obviously have hundreds of bots flying around. And, you know, it's kind of when you need it, you can use it. So that's kind of the design impetus. It'll all be belt driven. And then loaded into spaceships, sent back to Nauvis, and ready to rain freedom upon the bugs. So I think that's what we'll do. And one of the key things as well is everything has to be lit and have concrete. That is just a given. I cannot understand never building anything on now, you know, the floor. It just feels wrong. I actually think there should be some penalty that if you build on a foundation, the factory is more productive. But hey, that's just me. And I do think this kind of cell, you know, production is going to work. Might not even make it a square. I think actually I quite like the idea of rectangle manufacturing city blocks, sort of squares. I think that might be worth a look. So everything's kind of narrow and long. That's definitely something we're going to look at. So I think this is going to be designed to be something a little different, because Nauvis has obviously got huge rolling expanses and you can really do quite a lot there. Here you'd have to have an awful lot of foundations to do the same level of city block. So I quite like kind of manufacturing silos like you see here, sort of columns effectively. And at the bottom you would have raw material come in, and at the top you'd have raw product go out, or vice versa, depends, you know, trickle down or build up. It's entirely up to you, but I do like that concept, because I think that to me would look kind of cool. It's more efficient on the space. You see we've got all of these lava flows to the sort of bottom left of our base here. Again, I don't really want to have to fill all that in, but we do have a lot of land, let's say up to the north, so maybe we look to try and we'll kill the demolisher there and we'll kind of take their land, and we'll start to kind of remove all of the cliffs, and it just becomes quite you know, a nice concept. And we could have then even the manufacturing cells off a main line, so they're not all on the main line. They're actually, there's a main line, 2 lines that then leave into a sub sort of ring around each of the manufactoriums that then the trains can basically buffer into. So this is good. I'm liking this. I think this will be what we focus on in this next few videos, and I do think you've got to do this, because if you don't, what you end up doing is building something that you're not particularly that mad about. And I think definitely, you know, measure twice, cut once. So here, for example, we're moving our kind of giant solar panels, because solar power on Vulcanus is definitely worth doing because it is very, very productive. With the right, if you've got like legendary and epic level stuff as well, it's actually even better as well because it's obviously producing even more. So for me, you can kind of build legendary and epic things of everything in the game, and there's particular planets where it works and particular planets where you don't need them. So Fulgora, for example, needs accumulators because obviously that's the power. You're getting lightning strikes, which are incredibly efficient. Well, you don't generate them, you don't do anything, you're just capturing and harnessing it. Whereas on Vulcanus, having really good solar panels to me seems to be worthwhile because it does feel as if there's actually quite a lot of power to be caught there. And look at that beautiful bot production. That is, ooh, gets giving me little tingles. That looks rather nice. But there we go. So join us next time. We shall look again about manufacturing cells on Vulcanus, and we'll see how we get on. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll see you next time.